Welcome to Mill History Talk, the podcast where strategy meets storytelling, unpacking the drama, decisions, and disasters of war so you understand not just what happened, but why it still matters. The views expressed on Mill History Talk are those of the hosts, writers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency, military organization, or institution. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. London, summer of 1944. It's late evening. People are walking home through dimly lit streets. Shopkeepers are closing their doors. And somewhere in the distance, you hear a familiar sound. A strange, mechanical buzzing. At first, people stop and look up. They've learned what the sound means. The buzzing grows louder. It moves slowly across the sky. Everyone waits. No one speaks. And then suddenly, the engine stops. For a moment, there is silence. Total silence. Everyone knows what comes next. Somewhere nearby, the missile is falling. That sound, the buzzing and the silence, became one of the defining sounds of the Second World War. It came from a weapon called the V-1 flying bomb, and together with its successor, the V-2 rocket, it marked the beginning of the missile age. And that's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to Mill History Talk, the podcast where we explore the past to understand the profession of arms today. I'm Hope, coming to you from the book review desk, which is currently buried under a small mountain of World War II missile research, 3 coffee cups, and at least one book I opened looking for a single citation and accidentally read for 4 hours. Today is episode 62, and we're diving into one of the strangest technological moments of World War II, the moment when Germany invented the first cruise missile and the first ballistic missile, while simultaneously losing the war. Which, if you think about it, is a little like inventing the iPhone while your company is going bankrupt.
Today, we're talking about the German V-1 flying bomb and the V-2 ballistic missile, weapons that marked the beginning of the modern missile age. These systems were revolutionary. The V-1 was the first operational cruise missile. The V-2 was the first operational ballistic missile. And together, they represent the beginning of technologies that now dominate modern warfare, from cruise missiles and ICBMs to the drones flying over battlefields today.
But they also highlight a strategic question that still matters today. Can long-range strike, missiles, drones, air power, eliminate a threat by itself? Or do you eventually have to take territory and destroy the system physically?
Or in other words, can technology replace control of the battlefield?
Spoiler alert, history leans pretty heavily toward boots on the ground eventually. Let's set the scene. It's 1944. The war in Europe is turning decisively against Germany. The Allies have achieved overwhelming air superiority. American bombers are hitting Germany by day, British bombers are hitting Germany by night, and the Luftwaffe, once the most feared air force in the world, is rapidly collapsing under the pressure.
By 1944, Germany can no longer conduct large-scale bombing raids against Britain. The Luftwaffe simply doesn't have the aircraft, the trained pilots, or the fuel, which means Germany has lost one of its most important strategic tools.
But Hitler still wants revenge against Britain, very much so. In fact, the desire to punish Britain and terrorize London becomes a major political priority for the regime.
So German leadership turned to a technological solution, the so-called Vergeltungswaffen, the vengeance weapons. The idea was simple. If Germany could not send bombers across the channel, maybe machines could do it instead. 2 systems emerged from this program, the V-1 flying bomb and the V-2 ballistic missile. Both were developed at the Peenemünde Research Center on the Baltic coast under engineer Werner von Braun and General Walter Dornberger.
Peenemünde was essentially the Silicon Valley of rocketry in the 1940s. Thousands of engineers, advanced testing facilities, massive government funding, and extremely ambitious technological goals. Except the workplace culture was extremely Nazi.
The first weapon deployed was the V-1 flying bomb. Technically, it was a cruise missile. It used a pulse jet engine mounted above the fuselage, a gyroscopic autopilot system, and a mechanical counter that determined when the missile would dive toward its target.
The missile flew at roughly 400 miles per hour. It carried about 850 kilograms of high explosives, and it had a range of roughly 150 miles, which meant launch sites in northern France could reach London. But the thing people remember most was the sound. The pulse jet engine produced a distinctive buzzing noise, which is why the British quickly nicknamed the weapon the buzz bomb. And when the engine stopped, that meant the missile was about to dive. Imagine living in London during the summer of 1944. You hear the buzzing overhead. It passes somewhere above the rooftops, and suddenly, the sound stops. That moment of silence meant the bomb was about to hit somewhere nearby. It's basically the wartime version of hearing the Jaws theme music suddenly stop. You know something bad is about to happen.
Germany launched more than 9,500 V-1 missiles toward Britain during the war. Approximately 2,400 actually reached London. Those attacks killed around 6,000 civilians and injured nearly 18,000 more. The attacks were terrifying. But Britain quickly adapted. The British air defense system integrated radar detection, anti-aircraft artillery, and fighter interception into a coordinated defense network. As radar stations detected incoming missiles crossing the channel, fighters would be directed toward them while anti-aircraft batteries prepared to engage. The system improved rapidly. Eventually, nearly 80% of incoming V-1 missiles were destroyed before reaching London.
And pilots got creative. Instead of shooting them down, some fighter pilots discovered they could fly alongside the missile and tip its wing slightly with their own aircraft. That disrupted the gyroscope, and the missile would tumble out of control and crash, which is an extremely British solution. Right then, old chap, let's just give this missile a polite shove.
The second system, the V-2 rocket, represented a far greater technological leap. If the V-1 was essentially an early cruise missile, the V-2 was something entirely new. It was the world's first operational ballistic missile. Instead of flying like an aircraft, the V-2 functioned more like artillery on an enormous scale. It launched vertically from a mobile platform using a liquid fuel rocket engine that generated roughly 25 tons of thrust. Within seconds, the rocket accelerated to extraordinary speeds and climbed rapidly into the upper atmosphere. Some V-2 rockets reached altitudes above 80 kilometers. That's technically the edge of space. After reaching the peak of its flight path, the rocket followed a ballistic trajectory back toward the Earth. By the time it descended toward its target, it was traveling faster than the speed of sound. There was no interception possible, no warning system that could reliably detect it in time, and no fighter aircraft that could catch it.
Which meant something entirely new for civilians on the ground. With the V-1, people at least heard the missile coming. That buzzing engine gave you a few seconds of warning. With the V-2, there was nothing. No sound, no siren, no warning. Just an explosion. People would be walking down the street, standing in line at a shop, sitting in their living room, and suddenly a building would vanish in an explosion that arrived faster than sound itself.
Between 1944 and 1945, Germany launched more than 3,000 V-2 rockets against Allied cities. London and Antwerp were the primary targets. The attacks killed roughly 9,000 civilians and injured many more. But the V-2 also demonstrated something extraordinary. The technology required to build the missile, advanced rocketry, liquid fuel propulsion, gyroscopic guidance, and supersonic flight, represented a generation leap in military technology. In fact, the V-2 program laid the foundation for both the Cold War missile race and the modern space program.
Which means the same technology that eventually sent humans to the moon also started as a Nazi revenge weapon. History has a strange sense of irony sometimes. And this is where we get to my favorite Clausewitz moment of the episode. Clausewitz famously described war as a trinity composed of three forces: the government, the military, and the passions of the people.
Those passions, the emotions, fears, anger, and determination of a society, play an enormous role in how wars are fought and sustained. If the population loses its will to resist, governments can be forced to negotiate or surrender. And that idea was central to the German missile campaign. The V-1 and V-2 attacks were not primarily about destroying military targets. They were about terror. The goal was psychological. German leadership hoped that sustained missile attacks against cities like London would shatter civilian morale and create political pressure on the British government.
In other words, the missiles were trying to attack the Clausewitzian center of gravity of public will. If the population became frightened enough, maybe Britain would stop fighting. But history suggests something important. Terror weapons rarely produce the political effects their designers expect. Sometimes fear does weaken public morale, but more often, it produces anger. Instead of collapsing public resistance, the attacks can actually strengthen it. People become determined to endure the punishment.
We saw that during the Blitz, the German campaign against London earlier in the war. We saw it again during the V-weapon campaign. And we've seen similar dynamics in many conflicts since then. Strategic bombing campaigns aimed at civilian morale often produce results that are far more complicated than planners expect.
Which is another reminder that technology does not automatically produce strategic success. Sometimes the psychological effects of weapons are very different from what their designers imagine. And psychological effects are extremely hard to predict.
Ultimately, the V-weapon campaign ended for a very simple reason. The Allies captured the launch areas. The V-1 missiles were launched from fixed ramps located primarily along the northern coast of France. The V-2 rockets, while more mobile, still required launch areas within range of their targets. When Allied forces landed in Normandy in June 1944 and began pushing eastward across France, those launch zones gradually fell into Allied hands. By the autumn of 1944, many of the original V-1 launch sites had been overrun by advancing ground forces. And once those areas were lost, Germany could no longer strike London with the same intensity. The geography of the battlefield had changed.
Which reinforces one of the oldest lessons in military history. Technology can extend the reach of violence. It can increase speed. It can increase lethality. But in many wars, control of territory still matters. To stop the missiles, the Allies didn't rely solely on air defense systems or technological countermeasures. They advanced across the battlefield and seized the ground where the weapons were launched.
In other words, the solution to the missile problem turned out to be something very traditional: infantry, armor, and soldiers physically taking control of the battlefield.
Which may not sound as futuristic as rockets and ballistic missiles, but it's a reminder that the fundamentals of war don't disappear just because the technology changes. The missile age began in World War II, but the relationship between technology, strategy, and human will remains exactly as complicated today as it was in 1944.
When you watch footage of drones flying over battlefields today, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, or elsewhere, you're seeing the continuation of a technological idea that began in World War II. The V-1 was an unmanned weapon guided toward a distant target. The V-2 was a missile launched from far beyond the battlefield.
Today, those same ideas have evolved into cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and increasingly inexpensive drones that can strike targets hundreds of miles away. The technology has changed dramatically, but the strategic questions remain remarkably familiar.
Can long-range precision weapons break an enemy's will? Or will wars still be decided by the same forces Clausewitz described: the military, the government, and the passions of the people?
The V weapons were the beginning of that debate, And 80 years later, we're still living inside it. And if this episode got you curious about these weapons, we've put together a couple of quick ways to explore the story further. Over on the Mill History Talk YouTube channel, we've posted 2 short videos, one on the V1 buzz bomb and one on the V2 rocket. They're part of our Combat Machines series, where we break down the history and technology of famous weapon systems in about a minute.
So if you want to actually see how the V1 flew, how the V2 launched, and why these weapons were so revolutionary, those shorts are a great place to start.
And if you'd like to go deeper into the history, we've also published a Substack article that explores the V-weapons campaign in more detail, including how the Allies adapted their defenses and why capturing the launch sites ultimately ended the threat.
You'll find links to the YouTube channel, the shorts, and the Substack article in the episode notes.
Because once you start digging into this story, you realize the missile age didn't start in the Cold War. It started right here in World War II. Thanks for listening to Mill History Talk.
And remember,
History isn't dusty.
it's strategy.
And occasionally, a lawnmower-sounding cruise missile. We'll see you next time.